first edition of the Nahar Jeeto Bookathon presented in association with the Raisoni Foundation. In this session, we'll delve into the book Shaolin, How to Win Without Fighting by Bernhard Moestl. This book speaks about mastering Kung Fu as learned from China's legendary Shaolin monks, and it teaches the reader to empower their lives and interactions, which is applicably, personally, and professionally. The book teaches that beyond physical strength, the mindset overcomes challenges. In this book, the author Bernhard Moestl has unveiled the Shaolin mind power principle from which monks derive their energy. Through 13 principles, he guides handling stress and demands and bringing vitality to life anywhere without any monastery required. These principles offer a blueprint to live a life imbued with purpose, resilience, and an inexhaustible wellspring of energy, regardless of your circumstances or your location. Now, about our author, Mr. Bernhard Moestl was born in 1970 in Vienna and lived in Asia for many years. He is a management coach and gives leadership seminars internationally. He is also the author of many successful non-fiction literature. He developed his thoughts based on his profound experiences, which he gained through his duration of stay at the Shaolin Monastery in the Chinese province of Henan, where he lived with monks and studied their daily routine and the power of their thoughts. He uses this knowledge in several of his books and seminars. I'd now like to hand over the session to Mr. Bernhard Moestl.
Hi, this is Bernhard Moestl. I'm the author of the book Shaolin, How to Win Without a Fight. How to Win Without Fighting. And that is the book I'm going to talk about today, with many ideas inspired from Asia, ideas starting from beautiful India, going to China, and then coming back to my home country, Austria. As I just said, I'm Austrian by nature. I was born in Vienna, but after that I spent 15 years in Asia. I spent a lot of time in Shaolin Monastery, where I learned the martial arts of Kung Fu, and I spent quite a lot of time in India. So when I talk about writing books, when I talk about I'm a writer, people always ask me, was it always your idea? Was it always your wish to write books? And they're quite surprised by my answer when I tell them no. If there was one thing I excluded in my life, then it was writing a book. The simple reason was that I always liked to write. I always liked to formulate, to do texts. But I always said I will not be able to write a book. I can do a short text, I can do text for advertising, I can do text for anything, but I cannot write a whole book. So, interestingly, it was something I totally excluded. And after a lengthy stay of more than a year in Shaolin, and after learning very much about martial arts, about the principle of martial arts, a friend of mine, he said, hey, why not write a book about that? And I said, yeah, why not? It might be a good idea. Still excluding it, because I was sure I'm not able to do that. And suddenly he came to me and said, Bernhard, you said you want to write a book, didn't you? And I said, yes, why? And he said, now I have a publisher. And I said, well, you have a publisher, but I do not have a book. But okay, on the other hand side, I said, okay, I will accept the challenge and I will try. So I went to a German publisher. They wanted to know about my book. I had no idea, because I was totally unprepared in a way, because I had no idea what they want. So I started inventing things. I said, okay, yes, I could write about this, I could write about that. And they said, yeah, wow, that's a great idea. And so I woke up one morning and I was a writer. And I knew it would be a great challenge. And in a way, it was a challenge, because I had no idea about how to write a book. But I said, okay, I will do it, and then I will go to the bookstore and I will see my book there, and I will be happy to have written a book. And accepting the challenge meant that I started not only to think about what to say. I had many ideas about what I could write, but I had no idea how I could do it. So I started to analyze books that would work. I started to analyze bestsellers. I started to understand how other people do it. And this would end in one of the principles you will later hear about in my book. It would end in the principle of imitation. So I really started to get into the heads of successful authors, of successful writers. And I said, okay, let's try to understand how they do it. I started my first chapter, and I wrote my first chapter, and then I read it, and then a famous quote by a famous writer, by Ernest Hemingway, came into my mind. And Hemingway once said, the first draft of everything is shit. And to be very honest, that was the biggest challenge after having written a whole chapter, just to accept that even if you think it is great what you did at the first draft, you're very convinced because you invest a lot of time, you invest a lot of effort, and then you see, well, it didn't work out. You have to do it again. And just one thing I want to tell you here. The difference between successful people and people who are not successful is that successful people will do it over and over, even if they don't feel like. If they say, oh no, I wrote this chapter and I do not want to edit it again and to rewrite it again. Most writers, they will start writing a book and they will say, okay, that's it. Love it or leave it. But they will never have success. So what I did, I rewrote the chapter and I rewrote it again. My lecturer said, okay, this and this and this, and I did it. And at the end, that is what I can tell you. The book was not only translated in 15 languages, but the book also brought me to be able to talk to you now. So what was the idea? What was my general idea? I started being fascinated by, let's say, by the Asian way of thinking. That is how I always explain what I do when I was 13 years old. So by then, as a young guy, I participated in a group of other young people, and we had a kind of a leader. His name was Alex, I will never forget it. And Alex once was asked, what is the motto of your life? And this Alex, he answered, your mind is everything. What you think. And me, with 13 years, I said, no, how stupid is that? I mean, I am what I am. What is the connection between what I think and what I am? But in the other hand side, I say, wait a moment. If this is really true, if this saying by Buddha is really true, that would mean that I can be everybody I want to be. It only depends on me who I am. And I can be any person I want to be. I can be a successful person. I can be a leader person. I can be whatever. So being 14, 15, 16, I started to work on that. And working on that, I always also became fascinated by Buddhism. And I started to explore if there was something else in Asian thinking that I could use. Maybe Buddha had more quotes, and it was not only Buddha, as I discovered later on. And by that time, my parents, it was in 96, I will never forget it, went to India for the first time. And they came back shocked in a way, but very changed. And just to give you an idea of my parents' connection with India, that started in 96, lasts till today. And the same was true for me. I entered Asian philosophy, I entered the Asian way of thinking, and I found a whole new world. So on the one hand side, I started to study Buddhism, Indian religion, Hinduism, Chinese, Lao Tzu, Sun Tzu, all this stuff. And on the other hand side, we had a problem in our school. So the problem wasn't actually in our school, the problem was a neighboring school. And I was at a high school, and the neighboring school was not such a high school, let's say like this, so they were jealous on us. And almost every day there were problems, and almost every day there were real fighting. So they would wait for us to fight us. And many of us, especially the guys, we started to train martial arts. Some went to boxing, others did karate-do, and I decided, no, I want to be connected, to remain connected with Buddhism, with Chinese culture, with Indian, whatever culture. And I started to learn Shaolin Kung Fu. And this would not only change my physical abilities. Learning the martial arts of Kung Fu, I understood, is something much more than some movements, some fighting movements, some blocks, whatever. Asian martial arts are a way of thinking. They are a way of seeing the world. They are a way of seeing your opponent. So Asian martial arts are, in a way of life. And that is what I experienced when I started to train the martial art of Shaolin Kung Fu. And by then I started to have a dream. And my dream was one day I will train with these famous monks from this famous monastery in the middle of China. And of course, by then it was a dream, and everybody said, oh, you do it, nobody knows whether they even exist. But I said, one day I will go there. And in 96, it really happened. I had the chance to go to the Shaolin monastery, to stay with the monks, to train with the monks, and to get deep inside their minds, deep inside their way of thinking. And that, for me, that was something that would change my life. And many of those experiences I had by then, many of the experiences I had in almost 15 years I spent in Asia, I wrote down in my book. But let's go back to the writing process for the beginning. If you have, it sounds so easy. You have a title, I will write a book that will be called Shaolin, How to Win Without Fighting. And then you get a contract, and you have a publisher, and you have everything. And the only thing missing is your book. Because you should fill 200, 240 pages with some content. So I said, okay, how would I get the content? I mean, I could not only quote Buddha and quote Sun Tzu and Lao Tzu and whatever philosophers. I knew I would need to come up with my own ideas. So what I started doing is I started to watch myself. So somebody provoked me, and I said, hey, what's that? I got angry, I got emotional, whatever. And then I say, stop, Bernhard, just wait a moment. Why did you get emotional at this moment? Why are you angry? Why do you react the way your opponent wants you to react? So I really started to watch myself, to see how my opponents worked, how my opponents managed to make me react in a certain way. And whenever I had one of those reactions, whenever I read something and I said, wow, my reaction is emotional in a way. Whenever I had a fight and I say, wow, I will not accept it, I will fight this person, I said, stop it. And analyzed how it worked, how my opponent made me to react away, and then I wrote it down. So writing my book, thinking about me, watching myself, thinking about my reactions, did not only create some content, but it also changed me. Because at some point, I understood that the only way how I could win was to avoid a fight. Because as long as I was in fight mode, I could fight one person and I could win one fight. I'm not talking about physical fights. I'm talking about psychological fights, about fraud, about whatever. So I could win against one person. I could win against two persons, 5 persons, 10. But as long as I was willing to fight with someone, there would appear new opponents. Because people would say, oh, yeah, let's give it a try. Maybe I'm stronger than her. And then a sentence I heard in Shaolin for the first time came into my mind. A real master ends a fight even before it began. So I said, wow, the only idea is to not to fight, because that's the only idea, the only way that your opponents will leave you alone. So I said, okay, but what is the way to do that? What is the way to reach a state in which you can be fightless, you can win fightless? And I said, what did I learn about that in Shaolin? And in Shaolin, I learned that the idea is you need to be such a good fighter that there is no more reason to fight. I usually ask people whether they knew, for example, the great boxer Mike Tyson. And everybody says, yeah, of course I know Mike Tyson, or there was a famous Indian wrestler, the great Khali, a person 2 meters high. And when people say, yeah, of course I know them, I ask them, did you ever fight against them? No, why should I fight against those people? And they say, okay, would you want to fight them? I say, no, of course not. If this person comes, I will leave them alone. So I say, that is what it means to win without fighting. Even if you do not know if Mike Tyson really is a good fighter, if he really is a good boxer, because you do not experience it. You didn't experience it. You do not want to experience it. You do not want to provoke a fight with him. So you leave him alone. And in a way, Mike Tyson shows you what it means to win without a fight. So when I wrote the book, I collected my personal reactions. I collected everything I learned in Shaolin. I put together all my experience I had in all the other Asian countries, mostly including India, and I put it together. And as you can see, this book has 12 or now 13 principles. 13 principles that will lead you to a state in which you do not have to fight to win. The book is divided in 3 parts. And the first part is called Learn to Stand. The second part is Learn to be Strong. And after all this preparation, the third part is called Learn to Win. For me, when people ask me what is the most important thing, the most important condition on the way to win without fighting, I always say it is your mindset. Because going back to the initial idea, to this idea that made me think about myself, that made me think about martial arts, it was the saying of Lord Buddha, who said, you are what you think. Later on, when I was 18, 19, 20, I started to travel. And in those years, there was no internet available. So that was in 1988, 1989, 1990, let's say at the beginning of the 1990s. So there was no internet available. And by then I started to experience something very interesting. People could not do a quick research on the internet on who I am or on who I was. So I started, let's say, not to lie to people, but I just started to experiment with different identities. And I felt that people always would treat me in a way that was corresponding to what they thought who I am. So if I would tell people, oh, I'm a very poor student, people would tell me, like a very poor student. They would not treat me with any respect. They would say, oh, you're a student, you didn't work in your life for them. When I told people, yeah, I'm a young man, probably I look like a young man, but I'm already a lawyer, I'm a successful lawyer. Say, oh, he's a successful lawyer, we better leave him alone. I have no idea what he could do. And that worked for so many things. And whenever I said I am this or that, people really treated me like a person that was this or that. So I started to understand that the way to fightless winning starts in my mind. I began to understand that it is my mindset, that is the way how I present myself, how I think about myself, that influences the way I will be treated by my environment, by people surrounding me. And I know that especially today, even on Instagram or wherever you would go, you will find this mindset. But what actually is the mindset? What does it mean? The mindset is your expectations, whatever your expectations, whatever you expect, whatever you think about yourself, and it will influence the way you see things. It will influence the way you see yourself, and it will influence all the outcome that you expect from something. Let me start with a simple example, just to give you an idea of what I mean about mindset and how much your mindset, how much the way you think about something would influence your possibilities and would influence your life. Let's say you're looking for a book that is rarely available. It's a very, very valuable book. Everybody wants it, but very few libraries do have this book in stock. So you go to a city, let's say you go to a city in India, and you pass the window of a bookshop and you say, okay, if they have the book, they will present it very, very well, very lovely in their window. Glance at the window, you see, no, there is no book. So you say, okay, they don't have it. And you pass. But let me tell you something. If you would have entered this magazine, if you would have entered that bookstore, they would have 3 exemplars of this book. They didn't know that this book is so valuable, so they decided not to put it in the window because they say, okay, it's one of many books and it only would occupy space. So the reason why you do not have this book in your hands now is not because the bookstore didn't have it. The reason was simply your wrong mindset. Your mindset said, if they do not put it on the window, they do not have it. And it is the same with everything. If we believe that we are weak, people will see us as a weak person because we will act like weak persons, we will look like weak persons, we will dress like weak persons, like somebody who doesn't merit. So people will see that and they will treat us. If we, on the other hand side, if we feel that we are talented, that we are strong persons, that will be exactly the way that people will treat us. We will dress like successful persons, we will talk like successful persons, and people will see, wow, this is a successful, strong personality. I should better not mess up with him or her. So, indeed, everything starts in our mind. Everything starts with the way we look at ourselves and we look at people surrounding us. It is the same that many people do not realize that the power someone else has above us is given them by us. So if I say, oh, you are such an incredibly strong opponent, I have no chance to win against you. I have no chance to win against you. Even if you are the weakest person in the world, even if you are a 2-year-old child, if I say, oh, you are 10 times stronger than me, I cannot win against you because I make you so strong. I put you in such a superior position and I put myself in such a low position that I have no chance to win any fight against you, leave alone, make you leave me alone and not to fight me. So the most important thing we have to work on is our attitude towards ourselves. Call it awareness, call it attentiveness, call it respect. And how can we gain that respect? What does awareness mean? It means that we do the same that I did. we watch ourselves without any expectations. Why do I say without any expectations? Because if you think that you're really bad in something, you're really bad, you are the worst in whatever, and you do it and you succeed, you will say, hey, wow, I'm much better than I always thought. No, you will say, okay, this time I succeeded, this time it worked out, but usually I'm really, really bad. On the other hand side, if you have the expectation that you're the best in something and you fail, you will say, okay, I failed one time. If you think the worst about you, the bad thing is that you will never get better. If you think the best, if you have the best expectations about yourself, the problem is that you become arrogant and you do not see that you maybe made some mistakes, that you are starting to fail. And this will lead to failure in the end. So my master said once that a person who is really aware, he neither accepts the best nor the worst of their opponent. A person that is aware takes their opponent just the way they are and reacts on what they see at the moment. And this is true for me, and it is true for everybody in my environment, for every potential, let's say, opponent. So in my book, you will read many times the word opponent. And I remember when I wrote this book and I had my first presentations, a few people, but still said, Mr. Bernhard, what are you talking about? What opponents? What enemies are you talking about? There is no enemies. We are living in a peaceful world full of love. And I said, yeah, you're sure? Yeah, we are very sure. But I said, okay, but there are wars and there is the fight for this and the fight for that, and there is the competition and this, yeah, okay, but these are only exceptions. So awareness also means to accept one thing, that fight itself is a concept of nature. It has nothing to do with being good or with being bad or with being a good person or being a bad person. Nature created fight for a simple reason. It wants to improve. So the concept of nature is that only the best will go further. Just think of two animals that meet somewhere, two dogs. They meet somewhere, think of the dogs in the south of India, for example, where there are so many of them. When they wake up in the nighttime, they will start fighting. There will be deadly fights between two dogs who never have seen each other before that, just because nature makes them fight. So only the strongest will survive. Like it or don't like it, that is the reason why there is fight. And if you want to win without fighting, one of the most important concepts you need to accept is that fight is something that exists. The moment you say, no, there is no fight, everything is peaceful, you lose from the beginning. So awareness means to see things the way they are without judging them, without saying it is good that it is that way, without saying it's bad that it's that way. Just accept that things are the way they are. And you will be able, in every situation, you will be able to react on that. Another key concept to winning without a fight is understanding that there is only one moment in which we have real power. And this moment is now. Living in the moment means that I can change things, that I can do things, that I can use my power. In theory, tomorrow afternoon, I can change things. But I do not have the power to do it then. I only have the full power in this moment. So what many of your opponents will try is to bring your thoughts to an uncertain future. But I don't know whether you ever thought about one quite interesting fact. A person who is angry lives in the past. A person who is afraid lives in the future. Because there is no reason to be afraid in the very moment. Being afraid, fear, means you live in an uncertain future. Just let me explain this with an example. Even if you're afraid of dying, you're not dead at the moment. You are afraid of something that might happen. But the moment you think, okay, what will be in 3 weeks if I do this now? What will be in 1 month, in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years, when I go to pension, when whatever the world will not exist anymore? Your thoughts are not where you are. Your thoughts are somewhere else. Your thoughts are in an imagined world in a way, but you cannot be on 2 places at the same time. Just try it. Just try to be in Delhi and, let's say, in Nagpur at the same time with your thoughts. You cannot. You're either in Nagpur and you imagine having a nice tea or having a nice meal there, or you can imagine to do the same thing in Delhi or in Amritsar or in any other Indian or whatever city. But you cannot share your thoughts between 2 locations. But that means the moment an opponent manages to hijack your thoughts, your concentration, your attention to some other time, to some other place, you are not in the present anymore. And that is how attacks work. I just say, oh, look over there, you see that? And you say, yes, yes. And I like this. I will never forget when my master showed me this technique, and he did with his foot, like this. And they say, be very, very careful to my foot technique. Be very careful what I'm doing with my foot. And I stared at his foot, and he gave me a punch with his hand. And when I got up again from the ground, he said, I did not tell you not to be attentive to what I do with my hands. So living in the moment, accepting that there is no reason to make any plans for sure. So many people say, okay, when I will be 60 or when I will be 65, I will go to pension and then I will travel and then I will live my life. So now I sacrifice my whole life just to make money, to make whatever, because then I will be rich and I will be free. This has a little mistake, because nobody can tell you whether you will ever reach this age, whether you will ever reach the age of 60 or 65, whether you will be still healthy. The only moment your life is going on is the actual moment. And nobody guarantees you. It's not that we are born and, okay, somebody, gods or whatever, would tell us you have 90 years to live, so just divide them into different sections because you will reach the age of 90, so you can use 10 years for this, 10 years for this. That's not true. I had to learn it the hard way when my brother's father died at the age of 45. By then I was 20, so in a way I wouldn't say he was an old man, but with 45, 20 to 45, there was quite a difference. But when I came to be 45, I said, wow, that was the age he died. So living the moment means that we have to accept that every second, after every breath we take, we get a chance to take another breath. But we do not know whether it will be 5 more, 10 more, or 20 more, or maybe 10 million more. But there is only one thing that is sure. One day we will take our last breath. That is for sure. There will not be any breath anymore. So concentrating at the moment, concentrating on the person who is in front of us, concentrating to what we are doing, that means living the moment. And that also means we have full concentration, we have 100% focus on what we do, and that also will lead to success. It's something you, from time to time, need to train. And I just want to tell you a story. that might help you to understand how you can do that, how you really can live the moment. A story I really, really love. And this story is about a young student who says to his master, Master, I did everything, but I do not manage to live the moment. I try, I sit, I meditate. During my meditations, my mind goes to the future, my mind goes to the past. I do not manage to do that. And the master says, okay, I know a king. He's a friend of mine, and I talk to him, and he will accept you, and he knows the secret of how to live the moment. And if you want, you can go there. And the student is very happy, and he says, Master, thanks a lot. And he goes to this king in a couple of days. It's the journey, and when he arrives at the king says, okay, yes, I'm willing to share my secret with you, but there is a condition. You need to do an exam first. And the student, very excited, says, oh, I will do every exam. I only want to know your secrets. And the king says, okay, the exam is, you will get a bowl full of water. It will be really, really full of water. And you will take this bowl and you will make a round around my castle. And the student says, yeah, that's easy. Then the king says, yeah, but there is another condition. Behind you, in your back, there will go my hangman with a sword in his hand. And should you only miss a drop of water from this bowl, he will cut off your head. The student, shocked, but still wanting to know the king's secret, accepts. And so he goes fully concentrated, one step after the other, just to not pour one drop of this water. And then he arrives at the king. The hangman all the time with the sword in his hand, and he says, okay, sir, now I managed the exam. Will you now tell me your secret? And the king says, yes, I will tell you a secret. You're my secret, but you already know it. I do it the same way you did it when you walked around the castle, but I do it all the time. So whenever I feel I lose my focus, whenever I feel that somebody distracts me, distracts my focus, that is what media does, what social media does, what people around me do, I always think about that. Think about this student with the bowl in his hand and fully concentrating at the moment. So living in the present, awareness are two of these important principles you will always also find in my book. Another principle I started to develop as something I do in every day is the principle of imitation. This is a principle that is strongly related, for me, it is strongly related to Asia. It is especially related to the monks of Shaolin. Imitation means that you would, for example, imitate a monkey. You would imitate a tiger. You would even imitate a dragon. And imitating does not only mean that I would move like a monkey or move like a tiger or move like a dragon. To imitate would mean that I really become a monkey, a tiger, a dragon with my whole mind. Or that I become my opponent with my whole mind. So I would try, in the end, I would try to think like my opponent, to feel like my opponent, to love like him, to hate like him. Whatever my opponent does needs to be my own behavior. So why should I do that? Because the moment I imitate my opponent, my enemy, I become my enemy, and I can predict what they will do. As long as I do not do that, as long as I look at you as an Austrian, I look at you as Indian people, I will always think, yeah, I heard that Indian people react like that. And I will prepare everything on that assumption, because I heard that Indian people are like this and like that. So I suppose that you will do this and that, but what if you don't do it? What if this is something I only heard? So only if me, the Austrian guy, becomes an Indian with everything that means to be an Indian. I will never look like an Indian, but I can try to behave like an Indian. I can try to think like an Indian. Then I also could foresee what you will do, how you will react. Just to give you an example, if I would like to sell you a product, maybe it might be difficult to sell you this product, but if I would like to sell you a product, I would not try to find arguments how to sell you the product. I would try to get into your mind till I understand what you would say, why you do not want this product, why you do not want to buy this product. And then I would try to find arguments. So an Austrian person probably would have other arguments against buying something than an Indian person. So as long as all my arguments are from an Austrian point of view, it would not have any effect on you, because you say, okay, yeah, this is Austrian arguments, but I need the Indian ones. So I try to become an Indian, I try to imitate you, and then I say, okay, but an Indian guy, okay, he would have this or that reason for not buying the product or the service or whatever. So imitating will help us in winning without a fight, because we can foresee our opponent's action on the one hand side. And on the other hand side, and that is the last hint I want to give you here, if people start blaming you, if people start talking uglily, let's say like this, there are some people who would use very, very, very strong words, and they would call you, let's say, sorry for that now, they would call you an asshole or whatever. But there were some people they would say, oh, you are such a mean person. They would never use any bad words. They say, okay, you are a mean person. So if you really want to hurt this person, and if you really want to give back what they give to you, you need to observe what is the dirtiest word they would use. So if somebody really, really, really excited and really angry says, Bernhard, you're the meanest person I met in my life, that lets me know that the worst thing that a person can be to him or her is mean. So I would not say you are whatever, use any bad words. No, I would say, no, the meanest person are you, and this person will be shocked. So we also use our opponent's weapons, the weapons our opponent uses against us, just to understand how we can beat them with their own weapons. So the idea of my book, Shaolin, that in total, as I told you, has 13 principles, is to show my readers how they can use the power of their mind, their interior superiority, to not only win some battles, but in the end effect, how to win any battle, how to win in life without fighting. Thank you very much for listening, and do not forget, your mind is everything. You are what you think, and that is something you can change in every single second. Thank you. All the best.